What's wrong with you people?
Welcome to Not Another Baptist Podcast. And at Texas Baptist College, you'll find a community that is committed to help you succeed wherever God calls you. And when you attend Preview Day on March 22nd, you'll see firsthand everything that TBC has to offer. Preview Day is the perfect opportunity to explore the campus, meet current students, and learn how you will fit at TBC. Sign up for free at texasbaptistcollege.com/NAB. N-A-B. Kyle, non-alcoholic beerman, how are you doing? First of all, how does it feel to no longer be the man behind the computer and finally getting your voice on Replant and Revitalize or whatever that thing is called?
Revitalize and Replant. Yeah, it was fun. So that was that. You know what? It was a lot of fun. That was a trip that I took to Denver with Mark Clifton, and we were at Mark Halleck's church. And normally I'm running the board and building like the episode guides. And this time, for an episode that went live earlier this week, I got to be on the microphone. So that was fun, man. I've done a lot of stuff with Mark Clifton. I don't think I've been on a podcast with him other than when he was on ours, years and years ago.
Well, very cool, man. Well, I'm happy for you. I'm also not happy for whoever is the recipient of the fire truck that is leaving your neighborhood right now. Sad day for them. Not sure what's going on, but hey, fun little note. As of right this moment, 459 people have joined their virtual association that we shared about last week on the podcast. And it's been fun. Been some great conversations happening. On Wednesdays, we share a prayer feed basically where people can ask some prayer requests and stuff. And there's been people that have asked for those in separate posts and whatnot, but kind of a dedicated day, kind of like, we'll just call it the Wednesday prayer meeting. And
I like how you say on Wednesdays because there's been one Wednesday so far.
Well,
you launched this thing.
It's also scheduled for every Wednesday until Jesus comes back. It's going to be really awkward when we're all raptured and I still have 20 months. They're still going out.
I guess we'll find out. I mean, I'm sure there will be some bots that are like interacting with it.
Yeah, Bart Barber, and they're like praying for whatever. Wish we'd all been ready. But got some cool little things. A little shout out for Caleb Fleming. He's a pastor up in Sherman, Texas, that is kind of coming down on the wire with his PhD work and is going to KC. He's doing his at Midwestern and happy for him, but he's got a ton of work. And so he's in there getting some encouragement. A number of prayer requests, about 26 came in, and just seeing people encourage them and pray with them has been cool. On Fridays, or the one Friday that we've had, share a chance to celebrate stuff and people talking about new building projects or new attendance highs, whatever it might be. Mondays, some sermon recap, people kind of sharing either what their pastor preached or what they preached and getting some feedback. And then a lot of just had a great question from Tyler Armstrong about building renovation. They got a lot of traction. Yeah. And so what has been neat is at every 100 member mark, I share just, hey, we've now crossed the 500 member mark, 400 member mark, whatever. And just reminding everybody that this is a place just to be kind and to encourage one another. Leave the SBC drama and chatter and politics and all of that kind of stuff somewhere else. And let's just come in and lift each other up and just be there for one another, celebrate wins, pray with people when they need it, that kind of deal. And so it's been fun. And so it's kind of gotten off to a good start. So happy about that. But, it's a great place to kind of build trust with one another. And that's a good thing because that doesn't exist anywhere else. And we're not talking about Facebook, but literally anywhere, because some Lifeway research came out. How about that for a transition?
That was pretty good.
Lifeway research came out, and good news, public trust of pastors hits a new record low. It is almost to like politician level.
Very close.
Pretty close. Kyle, other than pastors named Bart Barber, why might there be low trust in pastors? Just without digging into the article, we'll dig into some of the numbers and whatever. Just
Yeah.
your thoughts, Kyle Bierman, unfiltered. Why is it?
So here's the reality. Most of the time, when a pastor makes headlines, it's not for a good reason. Okay, so your average person who really doesn't have any involvement in church whatsoever, that the time they're going to hear about a pastor in the news is when something has gone wrong. There's been a moral failure. Um, as we've dealt with lots of abuse cases that have come out, those are the things that make headlines. Unfortunately, occasionally you'll get a story about a church in the community that's doing something really good. One of the news channels here recently ran a story about a local pastor's 30th anniversary at their church. Um, but but in our cultural moment right now, generally speaking, negative stories are going to get a whole lot more traction than positive stories. And so the things that are going to come across folks' feeds about churches and pastors are not the things that we want them to see. I think that's a big driving um, piece behind this. Now, the flip side of that is there have been a lot of pastors, a lot of churches that have done things that have caused these headlines, right? It's not clickbait. in most cases, it's not just clickbait. There really are bad things that have happened that have generated these stories that generate the attention, and a lot of that causes the trust level to go down. Now, really quickly, I think it's also important to say, because you touched on this in the beginning when you joked that pastors are almost at the level of Congress. Trust in leaders across the board is down. Okay, so this is not uniquely a church or a pastor issue. This is across the board. Institutional or trust in institutions, trust in leaders is down, generally speaking, in our culture. All right, now we're going to talk about how to address that in a moment, but that's important to me.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it's not only this, but a factor is kind of like you just touched on, is what we see a lot are the bad things. What is going to be, in our case here in DFW, we've got Fox 4, that's the one we watch. And what is typically going to hit the news for every time there's like a tornado and they highlight like the Texas Baptist Men, and I love it. I'm always grateful for it. Like, that's always one out of like the 9 or 10 other pastors caught with this or stealing money or abuse, obviously. And so that's one factor, that just what we usually see, what typically gets some headlines, is going to be a little more sensational, a little more difficult. The other side is sometimes we deserve it. If pastors hadn't broken trust, that probably wouldn't be a record low. But that does happen, and we know that. And I know as second chair guys, we've been a part of some of those situations before, as youth pastor, worship pastor, things like that, where that is part of that equation. And so that's one aspect. And so the other is we're fallen and we're messed up, and we mess up and screw things up all the time too. The other side, of course, we'll dig into perhaps might be it's hard to build trust, especially in the, maybe if you will, the office of pastor, maybe taking personalities out of it, but the office of pastor, when homeboy is leaving every 2 years. And and so it's like, hey, we've got to get behind another one, and here comes all the new big ideas, and we get this going and change this and change that, and then he's gone and moves up or whatever else, and then the next guy comes in, changes this and that, and da 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 da, and like you never get that buy-in. And we were talking about this before. Brian Croft talks often, and I don't know where the statistics come from. I've seen it 1,000 times, and it's kind of one of those things, like you might see it enough that it's just eventually true. But I've certainly seen it, and been on the other side of that and seen how valuable it is when after that 4 or 5 years, that's when that guy is truly the pastor.
Yeah.
And so to some degree, you don't even have any trust before then, any buy-in. You're not the guy yet until you've been there for a minute, been in their lives and all of that, and actually built some of that trust. And so those are a few factors, I think, that this article digs into a little bit. But before we kind of dig into the bad news, if you will, I just want to take a moment to give a great illustration of two pastors or one pastor and then a pastoral team that recently was shared by Send Network, Redemption City. This is a church plant in Fort Worth, pastored by a friend of mine, Matt Kendrick. They recently did a long, slow, steady, building the trust, sharing and communicating and communicating and communicating some more over months and months and months to ultimately lead to where we're celebrating today, a merger between Chris Wright's church when he was the pastor there in Fort Worth area, and then Redemption City. And so it was one of those situations, a lot of churches like that, and I think we're going to see many more mergers like this where you have a church plant or one that is just thriving and growing, maybe with younger families, so doesn't have perhaps all the income that they need to really get into the building that they need. But here's a church that has an older congregation that has plateaued, or perhaps, I mean, there's a lot of different variables and a lot of different things that could happen, but it's just like a perfect match. But if you go in there and just shove it down people's throats, there's no way it's going to happen. And I just want to commend Matt Kendrick and Chris Wright for taking their time, listening, and responding to the questions, not being defensive, not getting all in their feels and all of that kind of stuff, but just really just sticking with the process and just taking a slow and steady approach to ultimately be able to where on, January 25th, there's an article coming out about this first service that they had this month, where they finally came together as one church, as this new relaunch together, as Redemption City. And so great job, Chris and Matt. I don't know that you'll be listening to this, but we are proud of you. And you're an example of somebody that has built trust, earned trust, and been able to kind of cash out that trust, so to speak, not in a negative way, but you've leaned into that, and we now see the results of what happens when you can trust your pastors.
And one of the things that's illustrated in that is what you just talked about, because Chris Wright has been at his church for, did I see 10 years? Just celebrated 10 years. Yeah. And so, I mean, he's built that trust. And even then, like you said, it took months. It was, so that's a whole nother podcast for another time. If you're going to launch into a merger or a fostering relationship or something like that, it's not something you just say, yeah, let's do this thing. It takes time to build the trust. That's a topic for another time. But yeah, great. I was encouraged by that as well. Very excited for those two guys. Very excited for that now one church that's coming together. One
little fun note is a lawyer friend of mine shared these stats today and said, "Welcome to the club." As a lawyer, and they're kind of at the bottom of these stats too. Sometimes good, bad, or ugly. But he's like, "Welcome to the club." But anyway, trust in clergy fell though for the fourth consecutive year, dipping to 32%, down from 34% last year. And it's kind of a sad thing because, we probably cashed in a lot of those, the personal bank account, if you will, where, the relationships were strained a little bit, perhaps during COVID, making decisions, difficulty, all of that kind of stuff.
Well, and not just COVID. I mean, there were a whole lot of things that happened in 2020. COVID was a big part of it. You had racial tensions that I think hit a fever pitch that year. And then there was this election that happened. So you had kind of this perfect storm of all these things that came together. And we've talked about this before, there were a lot of landmines for pastors to step on in 2020. Yeah. And here we are now in 2024. And guess what?
Hey, there's another year. Just like
what has been is what will be. There's nothing new under the sun. Here we are again.
So here's what's wild though. 2000 so when did you graduate high school?
2001.
You were 2001.
Yes.
So I was 2002. So 2001, it was 64%.
Hmm.
2002, when I graduated, it dropped 52%, down to 52%.
Now again, we talked about anomaly. 2001, I think, was an anomaly because, and they touch, and Aaron Earls touches on this in the article. After the terrorist attacks, after 9/11, trust rose for pastors.
Yep.
Because folks were asking questions. I mean, that was one of those moments in our culture that really created this atmosphere where people were asking big questions, right? Questions about faith and about life. And so, yeah, they turned to pastors. And so, yeah, I think that he touches on this. That could have been one of the reasons that it rose. But then, as you mentioned, 2002, it drops.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I want to take full responsibility for the drop from 2017 to 2018 because the Astros won the World Series, and I really leaned into that and celebrated that, and then we dropped
with an asterisk, with an
37%. So that's 100% me. But man, they just go down, and I think it reflects a little bit of maybe a generational distrust of some institutional stuff. I think that's part. They dig into that a little bit, but anyway, less than half, 45%, believe pastors have average honesty and ethical standards, while 1 in 5, 20%, say those standards are low or very low. And still,
so they think pastors have low standards, and less than half of people think that they meet those standards of trust and integrity.
Despite the decline, pastors still rank in the middle of the pack among all the professions surveyed, due in part to the falling trust across the board. So this, I'm not going to dig into it, but maybe we could look at doctors, and then all of them kind of one and one. But it seems like they're all going down in general. Of the 22 professions evaluated in both 2019 2023, 21 have lower levels of American adults who say people in those professions have high or very high honesty and ethical standards. So it's not great. It's just not great in general. Anyway, here, let's kind of flip it a little bit and at least say, how could we improve it? At least, we may not take it up a percentage, but how can we kind of along the lines of, insofar as it depends on you, live at peace with one another, like insofar as it depends on us, how can we build trust, honesty, integrity, all of those kind of things with our people? So Kyle, give us maybe number one, and I'll give you a tip. It's part of y'all's little thing with NAM Replant strategy that has 4 words.
And it's 4 words? Oh, preach, pray, love, and stay.
Yep. So step number maybe 1 and 2 involve 2 of those words: love and stay.
Yeah.
Love your people, and you're not loving them well if you're not being honest. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. Own your mistakes, all of that kind of stuff. Be a man of integrity. Certainly don't be lying on, resumes. Don't be, 1,000 things we could say here. Don't be a jackwagon, or maybe to steal Dean and Sarah's line, don't be a jabroni. That's step 1. Okay. So love your people, be in their lives, be trustworthy, be on time, all of those kinds of things.
And here's the thing. I think a lot of ministries, a lot of pastoral tenures end, not because the people in the church are bad people, not because the pastor's a bad guy, because the pastor tries to do things before he has, can we call it, the trust capital to make those decisions, to lead the change that he's looking to lead. I think that's where a lot of things fall apart. A new pastor gets in and he's excited and he sees all the things that he wants to change, and he starts doing it before he has that relational capital, that trust capital to accomplish them. So love your people well, let them know you love them, and show them you love them. Show up in hospitals and living rooms, and for funerals and weddings. That's where you build trust with your people.
Yeah.
Before you try to make changes that they're not ready for. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, the second part of that is to stay. Stay long enough to affect some of those changes. Stay long enough to build some of that trust and so forth. A big one for sure. Kyle, anything else you want to dig into here?
Yeah. So I would say it's not all bad news, and here's why I say that, because the only age demographic that showed an increase over the last year in their trust of pastors is in the 18 to 34-year-old age range.
Let's go.
Now, two things about that. First of all, many of the churches, certainly that I consult with, many of the churches that probably listen to this and that are in need of replanting or revitalization, don't have a lot of 18 to 34-year-olds in the pews. Okay, so you need to be aware of that. Secondly, a cynical side of this would say that's because 18 to 34-year-olds haven't yet really experienced church hurt yet. Both of those things can be true, right? So that second part might be true. But if you have 18 to 34-year-olds, invest in them. Show them that they can trust you as the pastor. Not because you're perfect, not because you have a superior moral quality about it, but because you are leading well, you're seeking to follow the Holy Spirit. And even when you make mistakes, you own up to them and you seek to lead even in the midst of mistakes. And with your older folks, those who are declining in their trust of pastors, spend time with them, invest in them. That's how you earn trust there.
All right. Well, hey, pastor, don't be a jabroni. Be honest. Have high integrity.
Yeah.
Look, stay above board. Look, I've said it before. You get into some of the different revitalization stuff and the different programs and steps and all of that. At the end of the day, make disciples, equip your people, love God, love others. That's going to keep you pretty busy. Yeah, be honest.
That sounds like something that the scripture tells us, right? Set an example, right? Again, that doesn't mean you got to be perfect, but it means that, live with integrity. Show what that looks like. Show what it looks like to own up when you mess up. Model for your people what this Christian life looks like.
Yeah. Show up on time. Stay for a while. Simple.
Yep. It's good.
Easy. So easy a caveman can do it. Kyle, send us out.
Hey, thanks for listening. And until next time, may your coffee be as black as night and as bold as the gospel you declare.
What's wrong with you people?